The conference is about to commence. Kindly take your seats. Let's welcome to the stage Bongani Bingwa.
Well, good morning, everyone. I think we can do a little bit better than that. Good morning, everyone. A warm welcome once again to Africa Unlocked, this time 2026, hosted by Standard Bank Business and Commercial Banking. Owing to previous success, this is now our third gathering. Can you believe it, hey? I mean, if the first two were anything to go by, gosh, this promises to be even better. In 2024, you may remember, the mandate was essentially foundational, unlocking Africa's growth. Last year, the conversation, you might say, matured, business shaping Africa's tomorrow. But now in 2026, built in Africa, amplifying Africa's growth. It signals that the doors are open, the direction has been set. The focus is not going to be just on potential or positioning, but on momentum and, of course, scale. As indeed you've heard, my name is Bongani Bingwa, and for those of you who may not know, in my normal job, I'm a broadcast journalist based in Johannesburg. I'm the host of 702 Breakfast on a little regional station that always tries to punch above its weight. I'm absolutely thrilled to have been invited to be your host once again, and I'll be spending the day with you. Africa Unlocked 2026 calls for deliberate amplification. Capital must reach job-creating businesses. Infrastructure must connect markets. Technology must scale, and institutions must convert momentum into lasting prosperity. Built in Africa is both a statement of origin and intent, and I think it's closely aligned to the brand launch. The next economy is not going to be imported. It is already being built across the continent. The task now is to make it bigger, faster, I almost said simpler, but anyway, and even more inclusive than ever before. And what a treat it is to be here at the Norval Foundation, here in Cape Town in this beautiful setting. I mentioned last night that the weather it's a lot better this year than we have seen at times in the past. And what an evening last night, an evening of reflection. I think there were moments that were sobering, there were moments that were somber, there were moments that were a pause for us to think. A strong Africa, united, building together, has always perhaps been a threat to outsiders, but I dare say it cannot be a threat amongst insiders. So we are here in this beautiful setting, this premier hub for global business innovation and cultural engagement. But before we do anything else, some house rules, if you'll allow me. For anyone who may have missed it, the Wi-Fi code for the next 2 days is Africa Unlocked. You obviously choose Standard Bank, but Africa Unlocked, all small caps, if you want to lock into the Wi-Fi. And may I ask that everyone's phones be placed on silent, please. Just give you an opportunity to do that, because we all think they won't ring, and then they do. And then we can't find the phone. I always say this as far as emergencies are concerned. In case of an emergency, I always ask that everyone remain seated. Allow me a chance to get out. No, we've got emergency signs all around the venue, and we'll, of course, be assisted should that need arise. No smoking is allowed in this building, but the smoking section is at the front, outside of the main venue. Again, the bathrooms are clearly marked as you exit this main auditorium on your left. If we need medical support and facilities, those are available on site. And if you need to charge your phone or any device, there are stations that can be found at the front. Speak to anyone with a tag, and they'll be able to assist you as far as that is concerned. Also, if you need a prayer room, people with a tag will be able to assist you on that. We really would love your engagement. You would have received information about the conference app. So if you if you want to give us feedback, if you want to participate in all of the behind-the-scenes engagement, we'd really love for you to participate. All of that would have been sent to you in your info packs. We've got a fantastic media center. I'm not the only journalist in the house. Lots of my colleagues across the media will be keen to hear your perspectives, your thoughts, particularly around some of the panel discussions that we're going to be having a little later on. We even have a fantastic studio just across from where we are right now. There's a fantastic studio. We'll be taking Vox Pops. We want to hear both from clients and from staff. There'll be Vox Pops opportunities just for you to give us feedback. Again, engagement, engagement, engagement. So those are all the house rules. Now, as we gather here today, an urgent question needs to be asked, says our first speaker. He had a fantastic piece in this past weekend's Business Times. He says, business leaders, investors, policymakers, and development partners, how do we amplify opportunity and shift into sustainable growth at scale? This week can't be about abstract conversations, but we need a sharp focus on practical action. And that, of course, is really a man who hardly needs an introduction to this room. In every sense, he's the real host of this gathering. Please would you give a warm welcome to Bill Blackie, the Chief Executive Officer for Business and Commercial Banking.
Good morning, and thank you for joining us today. What a remarkable start we had last night with some truly inspirational speeches. But my role today is to welcome you to our clients and guests who've traveled across the continent, coming from far afield, some from London, some from China, and to welcome you to Cape Town, and to welcome you to Africa Unlocked 2026. I'm also pleased to welcome members of our senior leadership team, our Group Chairman, Nkunya Mbezi, our Group CFO, Arno Denko, our Chief Executive of Standard Bank South Africa, David Hodnett, our Chief Executive of Africa and Offshore, Lungiso Fuzile, and our Chief People and Culture Officer, Sharon Taylor. Their presence is a clear demonstration of how seriously Standard Bank takes business banking, not only as a core part of our group, but as a critical engine in financing and enabling and amplifying Africa's growth story. Of course, a very special welcome to Mohammed Dewji, CEO of the MeTL Group. Mo, your presence reflects exactly what this conference is about. It's about unlocking Africa, and we're delighted to have you with us and to hear your message. This is the third edition of Africa Unlocked. Our theme this year is Built in Africa, Amplifying Continental Growth. It speaks to growth shaped in African enterprise, with African capital and African conviction, built steadily over time, often despite prevailing sentiment. That effort compounds across sectors, across borders, across generations, and businesses in this room are the evidence of that. When I closed this conference last year, I spoke about my absolute optimism for Africa's prospects. And it's that place, that optimism, is where I want to start again. Earlier this year, I visited East Africa, and I met one of our clients, Coast Cables, founded in 1978, a manufacturer of super enameled copper cables. It has since developed into a large-scale producer of domestic and industrial power cables, supplying across the region and now expanding into solar energy. But what stayed with me was not only the business itself, it was the conviction behind it. Through economic cycles, currency volatility, and infrastructure constraints, they continued to build. But when I was leaving, the owner reflected on his journey. For years, he had done what every prudent investor is told to do, is that he had diversified, hedged, and spread his risk. But he said to me that if he knew now if he knew then what he knows now, he would have invested 100% of his capital in East Africa. And that is a considered view formed over time, capturing something very important. An East African business built in East Africa and now enabling East Africa's future. But this is not an outlier. It's a representative of what we do every day. Businesses building quietly and persistently, without fanfare, and increasingly at scale. And this is the core of what underpins my optimism. That said, we have to recognize the global context remains complex. US tariffs are actually at the highest level in over a century. Conflict in the Middle East continues to disrupt energy flows and shipping routes. And the multilateral trading system, which we've relied on for so many generations, has seen strain more than ever before. And yet Africa is expected to grow at almost 4% this year. Intra-African trade will increase by more than 12% this year. Pension assets in Africa now exceed $1 trillion. But the data point I keep returning to is that today, business banking clients trade more with each other across the continent than with any other single external partner, more than with China, more than with the United States, or the European Union. And so their most important trading partner actually is each other. And that shift matters. It reflects something structural rather than cyclical. Our chief economist, Gulam Balam, who you'll hear from tomorrow, will offer a macroeconomic argument for optimism in Africa. And I'm sure that'll be supported by a chart or two. But in addition, over the next couple of days, it'll be the conversations that we have with each other, showcasing African optimism at work. Let me start with intra-African trade. Intra-African trade reached approximately $220 billion last year, according to the African Trade Report. Today, 47 countries are now in a part of the African Continental Free Trade Agreement, the largest free trade area anywhere in the world. Added to that, the continent's infrastructure pipeline has actually never been deeper, and its energy transition ambitions have never been more commercially grounded. But the most compelling evidence lies in the businesses themselves and the support that we provide to help them amplify their growth. 2 years ago, in this conference, Adrian Brisson from Hungry Lion spoke about his ambition of opening 100 stores a year across Africa. Today, that ambition has turned into a lived reality. Hungry Lion has opened more than 500 stores across 9 countries, employing 10,000 people, and now is on track to open 250 stores this year alone, taking them to 750 stores by the end of the year. It's a clear example of what determined execution looks like when an African business is built for African consumers and decides to scale at pace on this continent. Recently, Helmut Engelbrecht, our regional chief executive of West Africa, who's with us today, visited the Dangote Petroleum Refinery in Lagos. By all accounts, it's a world-class facility. Projects of that scale are never just a single business. They're actually an ecosystem of hundreds of suppliers, contractors, and logistical operators. In business banking, our belief is that growth is amplified in business ecosystems. When we understand the networks around a client and support them across relationships, platforms, and structures, we help value move across borders, sectors, and stages of growth. That's what allows us to stay with the client through their whole journey, from the first working capital facility to a cross-border expansion and access to global pools of capital. Today, our team in Nigeria supports 300 businesses in the Dangote value chain, with the solutions needed to deliver and sustain the operations of this world-class facility. It's a practical example of how ecosystem capability changes what is possible for our clients and for the economies that we serve. But international trade remains one of the most powerful engines for economic prosperity. African businesses are renegotiating the terms of their engagement with China, India, the Gulf, and Europe, moving from raw material exporters to value-added partners. Our partnership with ICBC in that context is now in its 18th year. It gives clients something more than a valuable corridor between Africa and China. It gives them practical access. Today, they can open renminbi accounts, settle more efficiently on the CIPS network, directly with Chinese suppliers, reducing friction in how they trade. Over the past 3 years, BCB has facilitated renminbi transactions worth 1.9 billion renminbi for our clients doing business in China. What matters, though, is not only the currency mechanism itself, it's what the access makes possible. For over that same period, our Africa-China import solution helped 720 clients bring world-class machinery and equipment into Africa, with a combined value of 1.3 billion rand. While our export solution helped 380 clients export directly to the Chinese market through multi-year contracts with a combined value of 4 billion rand. That is how trade becomes more meaningful, not simply as a flow, but as a capability. It's what allows clients such as Summerson Coffee in Kenya to move beyond ambition and into execution, supplying organically grown coffee into China, Kenyan-grown coffee, grown in Africa, roasted in Africa, now being served in one of the largest consumer markets in the world. But of course, energy and infrastructure are the foundation upon which everything is built. Africa today holds approximately 60% of the world's best solar resources and the critical minerals needed to drive the global energy transition. That endowment is beginning to be translated into industrial advantage. Since 2022, business and commercial banking has mobilized 17 billion rand into green financing solutions across Africa. Capital directed into the renewable energy and transition projects that this continent needs to power its own growth. Later today, you'll hear from David Johnson of Verdue Fund and Delma Simbai of Safer Power Group. Their businesses are very different businesses, but they reflect something important. That Africa's energy future will not be built through policy ambition, but through the combination of capital, technical expertise, and operators willing to build real markets at real scale. And that's why these stories matter. They show that the energy transition in Africa is no longer a distant proposition. It's increasingly a commercial reality, being built project by project. Technology is reshaping what is possible at African price points. It takes many forms: artificial intelligence, access to world-class equipment, precision agriculture, digital payments, and logistical optimization, to name just a few. But African businesses are deploying these tools to solve African problems in ways more innovative than what we've seen in the developed markets. And it's precisely because of the constraints that we have in these markets that we see that level of creativity. A good example would be Caliber Engineering here in Welkom, in South Africa. We helped them to source and import new machinery from China as part of their growth and expansion strategy. That investment has strengthened manufacturing capability. It's increased production capability, improved operational efficiency, and enhanced its ability to execute larger, more technical, complex engineering projects. But it's also created employment opportunities, supported local skills development, and positioned its business to contribute more meaningfully to South African engineering, manufacturing, mining, and industrial sectors. So it's not simply a capital investment. It's a business becoming more capital competitive, becoming more capable, more competitive, and more ambitious, because the right machinery, financed in the right way, changed what is possible. In that context, we see capital as an accelerant. Africa's own financial architecture is deepening in ways that were not true 5 years ago. The instruments that allow African businesses to grow and to protect what they've built and to have access to the international market, whether through our platforms in Isle of Man, Jersey, and Mauritius, or through the dramatically deepening domestic capital markets, are more sophisticated and more accessible than at any point in the continent's history. Within this evolving architecture, real stories play out in the businesses that we support. Businesses that are building distribution, supply chains, brand presence, and governance operating at a continental scale. Another prime example, joining us this week is Irvine's Group. Starting in Zimbabwe from very humble beginnings in the 1950s, this business now has operations in 6 African countries, recently expanding into Kenya. Across the continent, Irvine's distributes 450,000 tons of feed every year, supplies vaccines to 3 million breeders and 4 million layers, and directly supports poultry production with 110 million day-old chicks and 300,000 tons of poultry protein annually. So beyond their own footprint, they export into the poultry value chain in 20 African countries, meeting the needs of more than 60,000 broilers and outgrowers across Africa. They have become a continental champion. And that's what it looks like when African entrepreneurs, regional ambition, and the right financial structures come together. Businesses that start in one country end up feeding a continent and creating a legacy. The legacy, of course, is what makes growth endure. The generational transition is where many African family-owned businesses face their most consequential test. Because it's at this point that success must be translated into structure, governance, succession, stewardship, and the architecture required to preserve value over time. This is not a peripheral issue. For many of the businesses represented in this room, it's among the most important strategic questions that they will confront. And it's why I'm so pleased that Yusuf Nobai and the structured capital team of Standard Bank are with us today to share practical insights into how businesses can protect what they've built and to position itself to endure through the generations. Standard Bank has been on the continent for over 160 years. We have seen cycles come and go. We've seen optimism followed by disappointment, and disappointment followed by something much quieter and much more durable. The conviction that comes from watching African businesses build through adversity emerge stronger on the other side. And so what we're experiencing is not just a cycle, it is a structural shift. And the reason I'm so confident, not only in the macro data, but in the conversations that I have with you, our clients, it is examples that we share, it's mandates on our desks, it's the businesses that you are choosing to build here, invest here, and scale here, rather than looking elsewhere for validation. Before I close, let me end with a practical request. This conference brings together just a very small portion of our client base. And what happens in this room cannot be captured in words alone or in the story that we tell about it. The most valuable thing we can share with those who are not here is not our narrative of the day, but it's actually your story. In the second plenary room, you'll find what we call our Vox Box. If you find something you hear here has shifted your thinking, a conversation has opened a door, or if there's a message you want either our clients or us to hear, please just take 2 minutes and leave it there. In many ways, it's what Africa Unlocked is about. It's about your experience, your insights, and your ambition, captured in your own words, to help us shape what we do next. Our focus in business and commercial banking is to be the most capable, most connected, most committed partner to businesses driving Africa's growth. And that's why this conference matters. It's not just because of what we say in this room, but it's because of what we do together to amplify growth, both now and in the future. Amplifying continental growth is not where we're going, it's where we are today. With that, let me say welcome to Africa Unlocked 2026. Thank you.
Bill. Thank you, Bill. I think, as you say, the numbers that are in this room in terms of just sheer head count perhaps may not be great, but I think in terms of the ideas and the possibilities that exist in the individuals who are here, I think the possibilities are limitless. I come from the Eastern Cape, from the former Transkei. And one of the things that is very clear if you are from the Eastern Cape, there is always a hierarchy in terms of how you engage with people who are senior to you in society. And that seniority is often based purely on something like age. It is impolite to call someone who is senior to you by their first name in that cultural context. Our next speaker and I had a conversation just briefly before today's proceedings began. And we were talking about a well-known jurist who was always seen as a bit of an avuncular figure, if you will, a cuddly, nice uncle. Increasingly, I think he's become to be a name that is to be feared. And if you follow South African headlines, you may understand what I mean. He tells me that when they last spoke, he told Justice Madlanga how proud of him he was. And I thought, gosh, those are things I'd like to be able to say about him and to him in front of this crowd. Many of you will know that he had a decades-long career in the public sector where he stood as part of the vanguard that protected our public purse from those who sought to raid it. He has since, of course, had a stellar career in the private sector and is now our Chief Executive Africa Regions and Offshore Standard Bank Group for the Standard Bank Address. Please welcome uButlungisa Fuzile.
Thank you, Bongani Pele, and good morning, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. It is indeed both an honor and a privilege that you have chosen to spend the next 2 days with us at this conference. I'm standing in for Sim, who cannot be with us this morning. This conference gives us a moment to pause, reflect, and focus on what truly matters, which is how we help African entrepreneurs build momentum, scale with confidence, and turn complexity into possibility. When I had the privilege of addressing the 2024 edition of this conference, we spoke about the big themes shaping Africa's future: job creation, energy and infrastructure, development, and governance. Those themes remain critical today as they were then. But what is different now? What should give us real confidence is that we're seeing tangible progress. Infrastructure projects being completed and commissioned, governance frameworks strengthened, and Africans taking charge of their destiny. Gathered here today are African entrepreneurs who have built successful and impactful businesses against the odds, with belief in their ideas, discipline in their work, and resilience. You remind us that Africa's greatest resource is not its natural resources, but its talented people. Talent that rises despite the noise. Courage that stands firm in the face of uncertainty. And hope that returns with every new dawn. And when the road has been hard, we have drawn strength from those who came before us, from the victories, sacrifices, and stubborn faith of our forebears across this continent. As bankers, our role is not to create, as Bill was pointing out, but to amplify. Hence the theme of this year's conference. Like literal electronic amplifiers, our job is to pick up the signal of entrepreneurial talent and to make it stronger. Our purpose is to provide the skills, connections, and capital that enable you to enlarge your real economy impacts. Bill has spoken eloquently to the story of entrepreneurs who have seized the moment, believed in their ability to solve for customer needs, and have succeeded and grown to contribute to the growth of this continent. Standard Bank is, of course, very proud to be part of these stories. As Africa's largest bank by assets, we are deeply embedded in the financial systems of the countries in which we operate. Our role is to help unlock growth by providing capital, connecting trade partners, enabling cross-border flows, supporting infrastructure, and giving entrepreneurs the financial tools to scale with confidence. We are not spectators in Africa's growth story. We are builders, connectors, and amplifiers, partnering businesses that are turning African ambition into African enterprise. Recently, I visited Tanzania. I experienced firsthand how infrastructure unlocks business and opportunities. The standard gauge railway from Dar es Salaam to Dodoma saved me almost 4 hours that I would have spent on an unsafe road. Multiply this by passenger days, weeks, and you get the picture. That is the time that travelers save now, and they use that time for more productive work, thus contributing to the growth of the Tanzanian economy. That is why, as a bank, we are committed to supporting both physical and digital infrastructure that makes it easier for you and your teams to grow your businesses. During this conference, many of my colleagues, some of whose names Bill mentioned here, will be talking about some of the specific skills, connections, and services that we offer. I would like to share with you some of the examples on how we amplify growth. And these are stories that Sim himself would have liked to share with you. Bill had indicated that at the end of last month, Standard Bank and our strategic partners at ICBC were jointly authorized by the People's Bank of China to operate as a renminbi clearing bank in Africa. This makes Standard Bank the first African-based bank in history to receive renminbi clearing status for transactions across 19 African countries. This builds on our admission to China's cross-border interbank payment system in November last year, when we became the first African bank on that network, processing $500 million in renminbi transactions in our first 4 months alone. And yes, if you annualize that, you get the picture. So, what does that mean in practice? It means, for instance, that an African manufacturer buying inputs from China no longer needs to route payment through US dollars or euros. Instead, we can now process your payments faster, better, more efficiently, and more cheaply. Recently, Sim, Helmut, and others visited Nigeria, and Bill referred to this story. They visited the Dangote Petroleum Refinery and the Dangote Fertilizer Complex in Lagos. In Sim's very own words, and I quote him, "The scale of what Aliko Dangote and his team have built is, in the truest sense of the word, extraordinary." And you know Sim with language. The largest single train refinery on earth, built on African soil, designed to end Nigeria's decades-long dependence on imported refined fuel, and largely financed with African capital, unquote. Standard Bank, naturally, is very proud to be part of that beautiful story and what it represents: African entrepreneurship, the beneficiation of African resources, processed in Africa for African consumers first, supported and amplified by African finance, is the most vivid embodiment of this conference's theme that Sim had wished to offer us. My last example goes back to last year when South Africa hosted the G20. Sim was the co-chair of the B20 Finance and Infrastructure Task Force, and of course I had the honor to deputize him. I was redundant most of the time, I must admit. For the first time in history, Africa held the G20 presidency, and with it, the opportunity to set the terms of a global conversation about capital, infrastructure, and development finance. And of course, our own esteemed chairman, Nku, was the co-chair of the structure that sits above that. So Standard Bank makes waves here and globally. We brought together over 1,400 professionals from 25 countries and 16 sectors. We debated, argued, and ultimately aligned on a set of recommendations that went to the G20 leaders in Johannesburg in November, minus one of them, of course. And here is what I took from that process. Beyond the policy recommendations themselves, the world is more willing to listen to Africa than it has ever been. It's really very simple. The global economy needs African minerals and energy, African growth markets, and African human capital and productive capacity. And it is beginning to understand that its current approach to pricing, ratings, and financing African projects is not only unfair to us as Africans, but it is also irrational for them. We used the occasion of the B20 to begin to change the nature of the global debate on ratings accuracy and the appropriate risk weights for bank lending to African infrastructure projects. That debate is not over, but I dare say its direction and content have begun to change. One of the things we pressed hardest on was something deceptively simple, at least to some of us. Many African infrastructure projects fail not because the ideas are weak, but because they are not well prepared for capital to flow into them. Feasibility is rather rushed, governance structures are weak, and risk is poorly allocated. Our B20 recommendations, which are available for all who wish to access them, were clear. Use concessional capital to de-risk early-stage preparation so that private capital, which is available in abundance globally, can enter with confidence and scale. The B20 taught us many things. It taught us that the most powerful thing a business leader can do in moments of global uncertainty is refusing to behave as if uncertainty is permanent. Markets reprice, geopolitics shift. Trade routes realign. The infrastructure we build, the businesses we scale, the capital we deploy, these outlast cycles. The businesses that will define Africa's next chapter are being built right now. Some of them are represented in this room. We are very proud, of course, to be your partners for growth. The question is not whether the opportunity is real. The outcomes from B20, the clients that I've met across the continent, and the deal flow all say it is real and it is happening. Africa's moment is not coming, it is now. The wave is moving. The question is just whether we launch ourselves on it with sufficient energy, confidence, and skill and resources. As I close, I have one task of all of us gathered here today. That you bring the energy, the confidence, and most of all, the skills. We bring some skill too as bankers, standard bankers, dare I say, and will enable you to find the resources. Thank you again for joining us at Africa Unlocked. I look forward to the next 2 days, to the conversation we will have, the relationships we will strengthen, and most importantly, to what we will build together after we leave this room. Don't tell Sim that I did a bad job of presenting his speech. Please lie once in your life. Thank you very much.
I don't know, Budlungisa, shall we call Justice Madlanga about that last line, eh? You see why I call him Brother Lungisa. Now, for our keynote address, the first Tanzanian on the cover of Forbes magazine in 2013. He is in the top 20 richest Africans, but that's not how his story begins. He comes from humble beginnings and a family of modest means. He was born with the help of a midwife who was a neighbor in a house built from sand and mud. He's attested that he almost in fact died at birth, having the umbilical cord wrapped around his neck. But that's not where his story ended. He graduated from university and he assumed the management of Mohammed Enterprises Tanzania Limited, a commodities trading business founded by his grandmother. Now, if anyone understands how to amplify growth, it would be him. If anyone understands how to start small and to big to something build, it would be him. From around 20 years ago, when the Tanzanian government began to ditch loss-making enterprises, he bought them cheaply and he turned them into profit-making centers by trimming personal expenses. His group of companies is now the largest privately owned conglomerate in Tanzania. Please welcome Mohammed Dewji, Chief Executive of the MeTL Group.
Standard Bank Board Chairman, Madam Nyembezi, Bill Blackie, CEO of Business and Commercial Banking, and our host for today, distinguished guests, fellow business leaders, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. It is a privilege to join you today. Every generation is remembered for what it built. Some generations built nations, others built institutions. Today, we have the opportunity and the responsibility to build Africa's next chapter. I was reminded of this during a conversation with Gracia Machel, humanitarian, global advocate, and the widow of former South African President Nelson Mandela. She reflected on the extraordinary generation that fought for Africa's liberation and reminded me that every generation has its own calling. Their generation fought for political freedom. Ours is to build the businesses, industries, and institutions that will shape Africa's economic future. That conversation has stayed with me. It reminded me that our legacy will not be measured by what we inherit, but by what we choose to build. For decades, we have spoken about Africa's potential. We've debated what Africa could become, what Africa should do, and what Africa might achieve. Those conversations mattered, but I believe the conversation has changed. Today, Africa is no longer defined by its potential. It is increasingly defined by what it is already building. Across our continent, entrepreneurs are building globally competitive businesses, manufacturers are adding value, farmers are feeding nations, and innovators are solving African problems with African solutions. This is not tomorrow's story, it is today's reality. Africa is home to nearly 1.5 billion people, and by 2015, 1 in every 4 people on earth will be African. It has the world's youngest population. Approximately 60% of the world's uncultivated arable land, abundant critical minerals, and one of the fastest growing consumer markets in the world. These are not simply indicators of potential. They are the foundation of our future growth. The question is no longer whether Africa can build. The question is whether we will build boldly enough. My own journey reinforced that belief. After graduating from Georgetown University, I returned to Tanzania to join our family business. What I discovered was very simple. Africa rewards endurance more than perfection. Success on this continent is rarely about finding the path of least resistance. It is about having the courage to keep building, the resilience to keep adapting, and the discipline to keep moving forward long before the results are visible. Those experiences have shaped my journey, and I'd like to share a few of them with you today. Believe before others believe. We all understand that capital is one of the biggest challenges for African businesses. When I began expanding MeTL, Tanzania's banking sector was still in its early stages of development. In 1998, the country's largest commercial bank then had a paid-up capital of only $10 million. That meant the maximum financing available to businesses like ours was $2 million, far below what we needed to support the scale of our ambitions. Like many African entrepreneurs, we had to look beyond our borders for growth capital. We knocked on many doors. Many saw the potential, but few were prepared to back the ambition. Eventually, one bank believed in us, and that was Standard Bank. So thank you so much, Standard Bank. That partnership transformed our trajectory. Before we became the conglomerate we are today, my grandparents were retailers. They sold small packets of salt and other daily necessities from a corner store in rural Tanzania. Talk about small, humble beginnings of retail. We're not talking about selling in cartons or kilos or tons. At that time, people were buying and selling in grams. My father started with transport, moving goods across difficult routes at a time when infrastructure was limited and building a business required extraordinary resilience. He spent countless hours traveling across the country to ensure that the goods reached the people who needed them. Growing from a small retail outlet to a $30 million revenue business required grit, determination, and deep belief. That belief continues to inspire me today. Behind every successful company is someone who believed before everyone else did. Yes, capital matters, but confidence and resilience matters first. As leaders, investors, and financial institutions, we should always ask ourselves, whose ambitions are we willing to believe in before the market does? 2, build for people, not markets. We never asked what business should we enter. We asked what problems can we solve. The question shaped our investments across manufacturing of fast-moving consumer products. When you build around people rather than markets, growth becomes the outcome, not the objective. Businesses that improve everyday life become institutions that earn trust. MeTL Group began as a trading business, moving essential goods to the people who needed them. But as Tanzania and Africa continued to evolve, we realized that trading alone would never be enough. When I returned to Tanzania from the US, many expected me to continue expanding our trading operations. Instead, we made a decision to invest in manufacturing at a time when it was far from the obvious choice. We believed Africa could not build lasting prosperity by exporting raw materials and importing finished products. A little bit of what MeTL does. MeTL continues still to be a large trading house like a Cargill or Dreyfus. We import everything from sugar, rice, fertilizer, from bubble gum to yeast, from tractors to motorcycles, from air conditioners to fans. But we also export a lot of agricultural commodities, coffee, cocoa, sesame seeds, yellow gram, pigeon peas, cotton. Anything that grows in East and Central Africa, we export. So that is our first silo. The second silo, we're into manufacturing, edible oils, cooking fats, margarine, soaps, detergents. We compete with the likes of Coke and Pepsi and Unilever. Actually, we have now surpassed our carbonated drinks business and have a bigger market share than Coca-Cola in Tanzania. We are into textiles, everything from ginning, spinning, weaving, processing, mercerizing, dyeing, knitting, printing, and garmenting. So a lot of manufacturing. We're into logistics, we have warehousing, ICT infrastructure, retail outlets, countrywide, with a large fleet of thousands of vehicles. We're into agriculture. We do macadamia, avocado, tea, tea, and we are the largest, now the third largest sisal producers globally. We are also into financial institutions, insurance, microfinance. Today, MeTL manufactures more than 50 product categories, operating in 11 African countries, employing over 40,000 people, and is on track to generate more than 3 billion in annual revenues in 2026. Rather than sitting in a comfortable office, I spend long days on factory floors alongside our teams, helping turn struggling businesses into successful manufacturing operations. Many of the factories we acquired were underperforming. We saw the potential where others saw problems. Investing in newer efficient technologies, systems, and people to transform them into productive businesses. The ability to adapt has been one of MeTL's greatest strengths. Over the years, we have navigated commodity cycles, currency fluctuations, changing regulations, and shifting consumer demand. We have adapted because the needs of our customers have continued to shift. Markets evolve, consumers need change, economies grow, but the principle remains the same. Build for people, and the market will follow. 3, build value, not just volume. For too long, Africa has exported raw materials and imported finished goods. Every time we export raw materials, without processing them, we also export jobs, skills, technology, and economic value. Today, the world is paying renewed attention to Africa's critical minerals. Some have called it a new scramble for African resource. But this time, Africa must write a different story. Across the continent, governments are increasingly encouraging local processing and value addition because they recognize that the true prosperity comes from capturing more value before export. At MeTL, the same thinking is shaping our investment in graphite or graphene. Graphite is a critical mineral for the future, powering electric vehicles, battery storage, renewable energy, and advanced manufacturing. The real value, however, lies not simply in mining it, but processing it. We are developing graphite projects in Africa with a clear ambition to build local value addition. Within the next year, we expect to commission a processing plant capable of producing approximately 50,000 tons of graphite annually at around 95% purity. But this is not the beginning. Our medium to long-term ambition is to invest approximately $250 million to produce 99.5% battery-grade graphite, creating significantly greater value here in Africa while supplying global markets. This is the future Africa must pursue. Africa should not simply supply raw materials that power the world, but rather process, manufacture, and capture more of the value they create. The same principle applies to agriculture. Prosperity comes not from what we extract, but from what we create. I want to talk a little bit about partnerships. Partnerships multiply progress. No entrepreneurs succeeds alone. No company grows alone. No nation develops alone. MeTL Group has become what it is today because of the people and partners who saw potential in us. Most of all, the Tanzanian and the Africans who supported us along the way. My father built relationships that connected Tanzania to markets in India and China. Over time, we have continued to expand those relationships globally. This is important because Africa's growth will depend not only what we produce, but how well we connect to the world. But real partnerships does not stop at the business world. I believe deeply that it is our duty to improve the lives of the people around us. I have been fortunate to build a successful business, and I believe that with success comes a weighty responsibility to give back. That is why I signed the Giving Pledge, committing at least half of my personal wealth to philanthropy. I want to share a small story. When I was born in a very small town in Singida, and when I got back from university, I went back to visit my grandfather's grave. And it was an urban town, and I decided to drive 5-10 kilometers out. I saw an old man kneeling down. There was a puddle of yellow water. He had a plate, and he had a bucket, and he would scoop the water and put it in the bucket. I greeted him in Kiswahili by saying shikamo, and asked him that what he was doing. And he told me that this is the water that they were drinking. Of course, I could not believe that. So he understood that I wasn't believing him. So he invited me to his home, and I saw children drinking that same yellow water in used PET bottles. And I asked him, "Who's your member of parliament?" And he said, "My member of parliament is the Minister of Water." That touched my life. And when I started researching, I realized that healthcare centers were far, education levels were low. When children got sick, by the time they got to healthcare centers, 4 out of 10 children were dying. Now, nobody can tell me that a child's life in New York has got more value than a child's life in South Africa or in Tanzania. I believe a life equals to a life. And thus, my philanthropy journey. Through the Mohammed Dewji Foundation, we invest in building blocks and allow people to thrive in education, healthcare, and clean and safe water. In education, we have awarded thousands of scholarships, higher education scholarships, to young Tanzanian men and women, many of whom are the first generation within their families to access higher education. And with humility, I can say our scholarship track record stands at 96% post-graduation success rate. In healthcare, we have treated more than 120,000 patients. We've restored the gift of sight through 10,000 eye surgeries. And with this restored dignity, they re-engage back in community affairs and livelihood activities. We also support children with cancer, having successfully improved their chances of survival from 10% to 60% over the 10-year period. And also we support children born with spina bifida and hydrocephalus, conditions in which without care, more than 60% of children do not live to see their third birthday. And in water, we have elevated our work through our One Water strategy, because water is never a single-use resource. One well changes education, health, and livelihood at the same time. So we designed a strategy that deliberately delivers all three. For me, philanthropy is not just charity. It's an investment in human capital, because when people are healthy, educated, and given the opportunity, they build stronger families, stronger businesses, and stronger nations. Let me give you one example of what happened when business and philanthropy shakes hands. About a year ago, I was speaking to a CEO of Kerry Group. It's an Irish conglomerate, market cap around 20 odd billion euro, about our scholarship program. One conversation led to another, and before we knew it, we had co-designed something new, the Mo Kerry Scholarship Program, developing food scientists for Africa. Here is how it works. Scholars study at Tanzania's top 2 universities, the University of Dar es Salaam and Sokoine University of Agriculture. Then they spend more than 6 months inside MeTL's manufacturing industries on real industry placement. They graduate with something most graduates never get, a degree in one hand and a real market practice on the other. We have closed the gap between academia and industry, the gap that holds back so many of Africa's graduates. One conversation, one global company, one philanthropy organization, and a pipeline of young African food scientists that none of us could have created alone. This is the power of partnership. It connects business with education. It connects global expertise with local talent. It creates growth that no one organization could create alone. Finally, never stop building. Africa is evolving, and so must African businesses. Every generation must ask itself a simple question: what does Africa need next? The question continues to shape where we invest. Today, our ambitions extend beyond manufacturing into sectors such as critical minerals, hospitality, technology, and real estate. Not because they are the industries of today, but because we believe they will help shape the Africa of tomorrow. But none of these industries can succeed without investing in Africa's greatest resource, its people. Over the past decade, our continent has produced world-class entrepreneurs, engineers, innovators, and business leaders. Yet a better future still lies ahead. That means investing not only in infrastructure, but equally in education, technology, skills development, and knowledge transfer. That, to me, is Africa's next frontier. And it is the ambition that continues to drive me over time. I have come to realize that building is about more than business. Business creates prosperity, philanthropy expands opportunity, sports inspires itself. Through MeTL Group, the Mohammed Dewji Foundation, and my investment in my beloved football club, Simba, the goal has never simply been to build successful institutions. It has been to build institutions that develop people, unlocking potential, nurturing talents, and equipping the next generation to build even further than we have. Because ultimately, our greatest legacy will not be the business we built, but the people those businesses help build. The sectors may change, the mission does not. Building is not an event, it is a mindset. It is the decision to leave something better than you found it. So let me leave you with one final question. When future generations look back on us, what will they say we have built? Will they remember us as a generation that spoke about Africa's potential, or as a generation that finally built it? I know what I hope they will say, that we chose courage over comfort, that we created value, not just wealth, that we believed in Africa before the world did, and that together we built businesses, industries, institutions, and most importantly, people who transformed our continent. The era of talking about Africa's potential is over. The era of building Africa is here. So let's build boldly. Let's build together. Let's build an Africa that future generations will be proud to inherit. Thank you. God bless you all, and God bless Africa.
Now that's how you deliver a keynote, hey? Absolutely fantastic. Thank you. I think whether we're talking business, whether we're talking philanthropy, I think one of the core messages I got out of that is, what do you see? You gave us an expression or a phrase in Kiswahili.